Hello everyone, this is China Paradigm, where we, Dashi Consulting, interview seasoned entrepreneurs in China. Hello everyone, I'm Matthieu David, the founder of Dashi Consulting, a strategic market research company in China, and this podcast, China Paradigm. And today, I am with Fabian Ouwehand. You are the founder and CEO of UPLAB. UPLAB is an influencer marketing agency. You are working with brands in order to connect them and work with influencers. So we are going to go more in depth on this. And I feel you are doing more than this. And it's actually a bit a reduction of what you do, what I'm saying right now. But you do more as well in terms of companies. You're involved in two other companies. One is Lively Care, and one is LHBS. You are going to tell me if I'm correct that you are involved in three different companies with three very, very different objectives and scope of business. So thanks for being with Fabian. You're going maybe to correct me what I said. Don't hesitate because you seem very active, and I feel UPLAB was very clear for me on what it is. I was a bit less clear about the two other involvement you have, and you listed on LinkedIn. So thanks, Fabian, for being with us. And so what are your three functions today?
Yeah, so I've been always doing a lot of different kind of stuff. I kind of always hustled around. That's partly because I'm still pretty young. I never went to university or something like that. So I always had kind of my own stuff and my own company over the last couple of years. So I've been always doing different things. And I always also had a lot of different interests by working with a lot of different clients. So I started my company UPLAB about 2 years ago when I just moved to China at that time. Myself, I have a marketing background, more into marketing technology, growth marketing, growth hacking. And when I moved to China, it was like a total different type of environment. And I wasn't very familiar with China, so I'd learned a lot by doing things and got a lot by learning, meeting different people and stuff like that. So I've been doing UPLAB for the last couple of years, and actually a lot by learning by doing, which is more like the growth mindset too, and headed that more into influencer marketing, and that's what we're doing today. On the side, I've been doing the last couple of years, I had a nonprofit in mental health, where we basically build a community of people who have been suffering from depression, anxiety, panic attacks, etc. in Asia, and have been developing that actually into a platform where Asian people can easily find the right professional help based on how they feel, based on their symptoms, but also finding the right treatment. If you're in need, you don't know if you need to have a psychologist, psychotherapist, etc. So that's mainly what I'm doing actually on the side right now, just because out of a personal interest. And then I'm involved in LHBS, correct, since a couple of months, where I do growth marketing consultancy for European companies, where I take a lot of my experiences, which I had from the Asian market, and helping some European companies here. So I've been kind of involved in different things, but at the end of the day, everything kind of comes together again too. So it all kind of benefits each other.
Where are you based?
I'm currently in Berlin, but I'm traveling, kind of all over the place. So I've lived in Estonia before a couple months, and before that in Shenzhen in China for about a year, Singapore before that. But still, my home base is in Berlin, but I'm regularly in Asia. Almost every month I'm back in Asia, traveling around and across Europe.
I see. Could you tell us more about UPLAB? I believe UPLAB is what you spend most of your time on, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. If you can tell us more about to the people listening to us, how many cases you have worked on, how many clients you had, how many influencers you are working with, a bit of numbers, a bit of the idea of the size of what you have done to give a bit more substance to the beginning of a talk.
Sure. So we started about 2 years ago, what I mentioned, in 2017. And we started actually with the basic things like, okay, we started doing marketing for WeChat and Weibo, content marketing, etc. And that worked actually pretty well. And we grew pretty fast to about 10 people in just a couple of months when I started out there. But then, yeah, it didn't excite me that much. And then from that moment, we pivoted. We started doing more with influencers. We actually have been involved with the growth of Douyin from the early days. So my girlfriend, who is involved also in our company, has been one of the first contracted influencers on ByteDance, so for Douyin's new project at that time. So from there, we have been building a community of influencers, and currently there are about 500 influencers in our network, which we know personally and have a close relationship with. So after some time, the content marketing for WeChat, Weibo didn't excite us that much anymore. So we kind of downscaled our company. We're now with about 4 people, and which are more involved in the strategy, and we execute a lot of content through influencers. So basically our influencers in our network are our content marketeers, to say it like that. So we have influencers where we run promotions through influencers themselves, but we also use influencers to create content for brands accounts. We've been keeping it small. So we have been working actually with a lot of SMEs, so small medium companies from the US, from Canada, from Europe, from Australia, from China itself. So I've been working with different clients, but because we want to have a lot of focus on our clients, we've been working only with maybe 4 or 5 a month or at the same time to really give a lot of focus. So we're a very small company and do a lot through influencers themselves. So that's kind of the current state of our company, and it's very exciting right now, which allows us to also do different things. So we're doing now a conference at the end of this year. We're helping influencers, Chinese influencers, expanding to out of China. So we're actually doing a lot of things on the side, which excite us a lot, and then benefit the brand back to that too.
I see. When you say we, do you have a co-founder or you're the only founder?
Yeah, I started as an only founder, and then I got my partner from Singapore. So he's still a partner in the company. So yeah, that's we, the two of us, but we have a small team around that. We're a remote first company, so we're kind of all over the place. We're traveling all over the place, but depending kind of on the projects which are coming in, sometimes we're based at one location for a longer period of time. We're actually working with a lot of young people. So I've been working with quite some interns or fresh grads from Chinese universities, mainly from Hong Kong University, because yeah, their English was pretty good, which helped us a lot. And some of them have lived abroad for a while and came back to China. So I've been really focused on having a young, very agile team, very lean, doing things for the new generation, basically.
I see. So you said you began with what we say WeChat, Weibo, politically traditional digital agency, and I think you moved to influencer marketing. I went on your website and I found that you have a kind of a product with a directory of influencers where you can see the name of influencers and so on. I don't know. I don't know if it's a key product for you. But could you tell us more about what you do for influencers? It could be in terms of selection, can be in terms of product. Could you go a bit deeper?
Yeah, so what I mentioned earlier, we pivoted a little bit more to influencer marketing in terms of that, and basically actually helping influencers themselves too. So because we've been working with influencers very close, we're actually looking from their perspective more than we do from a brand's perspective, and see how can we bring as much value as possible to the influencer. The brand usually kind of already knows what kind of campaign they want to run, they or have products, etc. The influencer, however, is a person who's usually lost, kind of. They know how to create content, they know how to build this audience, engage with this audience, but they're not always real business people in the sense of like they don't know how to or monetize or start their own brand or even work with brands and companies. So that's where we saw bigger needs. So we've been doing more from an influencer side and see like, hey, how can we help them do or better brand collaborations or start their own brand or become sustainable for a longer period of time and help them grow on different channels, see what different types of content they can create and how to make a positive impact with that reach they have instead of creating similar types of content for years. So we try to help them innovate. So what you mentioned, the platform we have was actually more, we had a lot of companies coming to us and said like, hey, we want to work with influencers. Can you propose us a list of interesting influencers we can work with? So we basically built more this platform for ourselves where we can go quickly through our influencers and directly send that to our potential clients, for example. So we use it more as a resource for ourselves. So we don't use it compared with a Parkloo really as a tech, as a product itself. We're more the strategy, creative side of that, but we're using tools more as a support to reduce our time spent on finding the right influencers for the brand.
I see. You mentioned before that in the traditional agency you built, you scaled up to 10 people very quickly in your team. How did you find your clients to start quickly and to get to have the need of 10 people in your team? Was it through the internet? Was it through your network? Was it how did you find them?
Yeah, that's kind of what I kind of surprised for myself too, right? Like I was a young guy moving for the first time to China. I didn't do a lot when I was in Singapore, my time with China itself. So it was all kind of very new to me. So usually what I do when I go to a new place is I start organizing an event just to get to know people and kind of challenge myself to see like, okay, can I challenge my knowledge with other people around me? So I've been doing first an event in Singapore, then I did in Hong Kong right before I moved to China. And through that, you actually get to know a lot of people. So it's really putting myself out there first under my personal name as much as possible. So I started doing things on LinkedIn quite a bit. I started posting quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I took a very much of a niche. So I started being very much involved in Douyin when Douyin still had like 20 million users or something like that, and kind of have been covering Douyin from the start since they were so small because I saw the potential of them scaling very fast in a very short amount of time. A short period of time. So I've been covering that. So people started to know me as the Douyin guy, the guy who's covering Douyin. And from there, it has been going pretty quick. So we have been starting to do Douyin a little bit, but then these companies also required Weibo or WeChat because they're already there. And Douyin was something totally uncomfortable and new for them. So we took the approach of repurposing content for different channels, then with the growth mindset, see what works and what doesn't work, and then actually put more investment on the channels, for example, which worked. And in some cases that was Douyin, in some cases that was Weibo, basically depending on the goal and the objectives and the KPIs of the company. So I've been really kind of putting myself out there, trying to write more, talk more about a certain topic, and try to cover that as much as possible. So we haven't spent any, basically, we didn't have any marketing budget or something like that, and never spent much money on marketing itself. If we do that, we did it, for example, through a conference, right? So that was also the challenge of ours. We did an influencer marketing conference last year in Shanghai, where we secured one of the most exclusive venues, flew 30 of our influencers in our network over and got brands there. And what we did was like, we got speakers in the same industry, kind of to put ourselves up there from people who already been in the industry for years, like Parkloo, for example, who spoke. We were no one, right? We were around for just a couple of months, but that directly brings you on a stage with people who are already very well known in the industry, which helped us a lot in building credibility for our brand. So instead of running advertisements or whatever we're doing it through more experience-based things like a conference to put ourselves out there. So we directly learn from that too, and we directly connect with the right people. Yeah, so this is how we have been doing that.
Okay. And indeed, through your website and through what you wrote, or where you have been quoted, or where you have been involved in terms of conferences, there is a pattern. It's ByteDance. It's Douyin. You're talking a lot about Douyin, which is a Chinese name of TikTok, which is this app where you can share 10, 15-second video, and which has been very big in China, challenging the big tech companies like Alibaba and Tencent. Could you tell us more what caught your eyes within Douyin when it was only 20 million people using Douyin in China?
Could you repeat it, the last part?
Yeah, what caught your eyes when actually very few people were looking at Douyin as a major app, basically, when only 20 million people were using it?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, partly what I mentioned before, my girlfriend has been one of the first contracted KOLs under Douyin. So she basically got paid to create content, which is a very common strategy for these social media platforms in China, where they take small or larger influencers from other channels. So for Douyin that time, that meant like they got people from Meipai or Weibo, or even Musically from the US, where they took Chinese content creators, they paid them a sum of money, and they only could create content on Douyin, what basically meant people were moving over to Douyin. And that was really much in the early days. And what they did, they took people from first-tier cities where other Chinese people look up to. So, and because these people are creating content, so it could be, for example, Chinese living in the US or in Australia, creating content of their daily life. That's where a lot of Chinese are looking up to. So that basically realized a lot of growth for Douyin. And I started seeing with the way of how they ran their marketing, which was totally different than usual companies are doing. They had a total different approach where they actually use influencers to realize their growth in a combination with offline marketing. So I knew in some way, or kind of not knowing, but I was predicting it will blow up sometime soon. Because the way how the content was created, the way how ByteDance worked together with their content creators at that time, they were very close, they were working very close together, and these influencers supported a lot in the product development from their learnings from all these different types of channels, what didn't work well. And they wanted that Douyin was doing that well. So they had a very close community of hundreds of these influencers. And because my girlfriend was a part of that, I got a lot of insights from what was happening, what were they developing, etc. So I kind of put all my efforts on Douyin. It's like, hey, this is the next big thing or the big app in China. And that was when they were still small. And a couple months later, they actually started blowing up because Douyin got featured in some rap TV show in China. And then people started downloading the app and different types of content. And because it's very short content, it's very easy to consume. And I'm not sure if you're using it, but it's a very addictive app. The UI and UX it's very, very easy to use. So there's a very low learning curve, which attracts a lot of Gen Z users through that. So that's why I was kind of starting to cover and actually featuring new features, which were not announced even yet, because I knew that through that community. At first, and started actually covering that. And then people were like, hey, how do you know these things already? And yeah, we've been working or close with the Douyin team that time, the influencer team, and then ourselves, which had more the marketing side and kind of providing that directly back to the companies. Yeah.
Got it. When was it? 2018?
2017. So mid-2017.
Mid, okay.
Yeah. So mid-2017. So Douyin has been around for 1 year that time. They just started going abroad with TikTok to like South Korea, Indonesia, Japan. So yeah, mid-2017, they were still very small and they started blowing up in the first quarter of 2018. So our company started growing from that time too. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Are you using ByteDance? I mean, are you using Douyin yourself?
I'm using Douyin, not that much. When I lived in China, I used it a lot because I'm kind of still new in China, right? Like I've been living there only for a year. I'm still learning every single day. And actually through Douyin, I started to learn a lot about the culture and the way how they approach things, like definitely this young generation, because it was a specific type of content on Douyin, which is very localized to the Chinese market and very unique to the Chinese market. So I've been using it a lot, now less, because the content changed a little bit and it's very addictive. So the moment you start doing these things, you get very much sucked into that. But yeah, I'm using occasionally Douyin. Yeah.
What are the main functions of Douyin that brands can leverage? The challenges that a lot of brands had, and I think still have, is that they know a lot of people are using Douyin, but they don't really know how to leverage it. That was the same issue with WeChat at the beginning, but now it became easier and easier. And the path was very clear with WeChat that at some point you will have ads in the moment. At some point you will have official accounts. It was pretty obvious that it would happen. For Douyin, it's less obvious, except maybe advertising, like YouTube is doing advertising with the insertion of videos and so on. But could you tell us more about how brands can leverage Douyin and maybe share some cases of successful companies?
Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest challenge with Douyin, why still not a lot of brands, or at least Western brands, because there are hundreds of thousands Chinese brands already using Douyin, but definitely Western brands, what they find very tough is creating video content. And I don't think that differentiates for like creating video content on an Instagram or on a YouTube. How many brands are actually creating content on YouTube? There are not many brands who are doing that. And the same is how many brands are creating Instagram TV content? Still not many brands. And I think it's very tough for brands to kind of tell their story to people like, yeah, what do we film? Right? Like, I don't even know what type of content to create, or I don't have the budgets to create high level commercials or something like that. So that's a very big challenge for brands, what I've been seeing. So it's not only tied to Douyin, it's every short video or every video platform actually out there. It's very tough for brands. Then for Douyin in specific, it's very much user-generated content. So people are actually consuming a lot of content created by individuals. So if you go there as a brand account, it's really tough to create interesting content, partly because Douyin will directly push you out with their algorithms because it's not relevant for the users who are consuming that type of content. But on the other hand, it's really basically boring to consume brand content on an app which is all created by users, right? So where I see actually a lot of potentials for brands is, or they build their own influencers from scratch and leverage on platforms as Douyin, or they start using influencers creating content for their accounts because people already enjoy that type of content. Just leverage on the people who are already big on the platform and use it for your own channels, or create a different type of content. And I think what you see, for example, on YouTube, what brands are doing is they create more web series or like short shows or something like that. And I think you can leverage it way more on Douyin, and then in specific type of industries, like in the educational industry, ByteDance is putting a lot of effort on Douyin to invest more in educational type of content. So I think there are a lot of different opportunities, but the same is for repurposing existing content you already have in 10, 15 seconds and use it in different parts. The same is like, yeah, when you record a podcast of an hour, cut that in different parts and post these things on Facebook or whatever, right? To at least get attraction and add different types of content. Gary Vee is doing that very a lot he published something on YouTube and then he's cutting these things in small parts. So I think that's a big opportunity still for brands to at least get started. But it's also like, how far do you want to go as a brand in terms of your type of content, what you're creating on the platform? Do you want to have that in the terms of the type of content which is consumed on Douyin is very down to earth, sometimes stupid content, and not all brands want to associate their brand with this type of content. So it's really tough. I think a good case study is what Alipay did, is they started editing Jack Ma in a funny way from conferences he'd been back to 15 seconds with a funny song under that. And then they posted in the description, like, I hope my boss doesn't see this, otherwise this might be our last post on the channel. And this is actually kind of the type of content that a big company like Alipay is basically publishing on the platform. So I think, for brands, it's just like, what type of content is interesting for us and how can we make that in 10, 15 seconds? And that's, I think, a very big challenge, but I think that counts for more platforms than just Douyin. So I definitely believe you can repurpose that for different channels, but just leverage on what's popular right now on Douyin, and can we do something in 10, 15 seconds? Because that new generation, that younger generation, you have to trigger in 1 or 2 seconds because they can swipe you up and you're gone, right? So it's really important to create good content in 10, 15 seconds. Yeah.
Besides getting more views or getting more people watching your content or your name or your logo, is there a way that you have found that you can convert in sales, you can convert in subscribers, you can convert in something more tangible from Douyin to Tmall, to Weidian, to followers on some channels, to create a stronger community? Because I'm not totally sure that it's that easy to actually build a community from Douyin compared to WeChat and other platforms which are built actually to get followers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think every kind of, this is China ecosystem. So you have this Tencent ecosystem, then you have this Alibaba ecosystem, and now you start getting this ByteDance ecosystem too, right? So because ByteDance is a very new company, they don't have a lot different type of platforms where they kind of can benefit each other. But I think WeChat does that very well. Tencent does that very well, but Alibaba does that very well too. But ByteDance doesn't really have that. And Tencent is like, yeah, we're not providing you anything because you're a competitor on some areas of ours, right? So I think that's for what was very tough for Douyin at the beginning. I think it really depends what type of company are you and what is the story you want to tell to see if Douyin is actually the right channel for you. I think if you're selling products like beauty or fashion or even F&B, then Douyin is, I believe, a great channel to do that, because that's a lot of content, a lot of products from content which is consumed on the app. And then Douyin integrates for e-commerce purposes with Taobao, JD, and Tmall. So you basically can connect your store to Douyin and sell directly in-app without basically leaving Douyin itself. Or sometimes you get referred to a Taobao, but even that, the steps are very easy. And so that could be interesting in terms of if you're selling products, it's very interesting. Or if you're, let's say, in the educational industry and you have an English school or whatever, then I think it's very interesting too, because you can generate a lot of traction. And Douyin has these short videos of 10, 15 seconds, which is basically their core feature. But they also have live streaming, they also have stories, they also can post pictures and all these different types of things. Then you have... So I think for product companies, Douyin is the right channel in a way, like you can convert to sales because it's very or relatively easy compared with, let's say, a WeChat to generate traction because it's a very random app. And ByteDance has a very strong AI and machine learning, which basically filters out the right people for your type of content. That's why you see a lot of influencers grew very fast in a short amount of time, because they directly got the right audience proposed to them. So I've been seeing influencers who are selling hundreds of thousands lipsticks with just a couple of videos because they have that right audience, and directly the e-commerce integration is great. But I think, if you want to get more subscribers on whatever, then it's tough because it doesn't integrate with anything yet in that sense. It only stays kind of in that ByteDance ecosystem, which
You mentioned several times the education as a sector that could leverage Douyin. I understand that one of the concepts could be within 10-15 seconds to teach something very efficiently, very directly. Let's say, for instance, how to use your iPhone, how to increase the light on your iPhone, and how to put a new password on your iPhone, and to learn a lot from it. But do you have some examples that that have been successful in the educational sector, and it's successful for what? Because they may have got a lot of views, but then what for?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I haven't seen many brands out there. There were a couple of English teaching apps out there on Douyin, or even English schools who are trying to promote their brand through Douyin through that very short type of content. But the most successful still have been influencers, and I think that's what a lot of brands forget, like because they don't know how Douyin is scaled that fast, and they created that community of these couple hundred influencers from the start, which basically has been the main reason of growth, at least how I see it, in terms of the growth of Douyin. So I think you have to leverage on these people who understand the app and basically realize that the whole growth for Douyin in the reason why Douyin is as big as today. So I think influencers have been very successful on it, and they have been doing a lot of different brand collaborations because they already have that audience. But I think if you're, let's say, a school, just get an influencer, start creating content for you, hire them as a kind of content marketeer, and start growing your own channel on Douyin. But yes, again, this doesn't directly convert immediately to new clients or something like that. And I think that's something what I'm in general missing in China. Like I've been in growth marketing and growth hacking, so I'm very more analytical in that sense, and funnel building and customer journeys. And that's still very tough in China. Like there's not a clear funnel. You cannot see a conversion rate at every funnel stage was this and that. So I think that's something what I'm generally missing a lot in China. But yeah, I think that counts the same for WeChat sometimes, or Weibo. Like it's still very tough to create a clear funnel at the end of the day to conversion. So yeah, you can create a lot of awareness, which will probably lead to indirect sales. But if you want to sell and you want to get immediate results, then you have to start selling products like in the beauty fashion industry, for example. Otherwise, probably Douyin is not the right channel. But I think Douyin could be a nice challenge for your brand to see, can we actually make sense in 10, 15 seconds to other brands or our consumers or something like that. So you can use it as a channel to challenge yourself if we can provide a lot of value in these couple seconds.
I feel Douyin could be equivalent to billboards when you buy space in an airport to actually gain awareness, or in a metro station to gain awareness. So to be seen on your message could be seen, even if you cannot convert immediately. You mentioned that you know about Douyin because you are close to the community of some influencers. But except that, how do you stay informed? How do you stay up to date? Because it's a very Chinese ecosystem. A lot of things are in Chinese. When you're a foreigner, very often Chinese is not fluent enough in order to understand everything. How do you stay up to date to know all those stories and how it works?
So we started building our own influencer community. So that basically means like we just have a WeChat group where different influencers are in it. So if we have new brand collaborations, we will post it there, but we will also discuss certain things. Besides that, there are a lot of different influencer communities kind of categorized per industry for Douyin, where also Douyin is involved. So a couple people from the Douyin team are in that group. Some MCNs, so these multi-channel networks are involved, and then you have influencers who are involved. And because we have that close relationships with influencers, we hear a lot from them very fast. But also because we still have strong ties with some people at Douyin itself, we can just send them messages like, hey, does this work? Does that work? Hey, so this and that. And that's actually how we stay involved. So we kind of trigger ourselves basically on a daily basis, because this app is developing so quick, and there are all the time new features and stuff like that, which they don't even announce. So we try to stay kind of ahead of the curve with talking to these different stakeholders basically involved in that whole product development and who are using the app every single day.
I see. One last topic I'd like to talk with you is something you mentioned at the beginning, actually, is that you want to help, or you are already helping Chinese influencers to go outside of China. What does it mean?
Right.
Because most of them speak Chinese. I believe most of them don't have a very good English. How do you want to help them to go outside of China? Is it to influence the Chinese travelers? Is it to actually give them visibility with foreign brands? That's what you say, actually, to help them to go outside. What did you mean by saying helping them to go out overseas?
Yeah, so we work with a couple influencers like very close, where we work basically on a daily basis with them. So some of them, they want to work with more foreign brands, so they want to get their presence out of China, just to get these opportunities more, but also see what they can learn from the Western social media, their behavior, etc., and kind of apply that back to the Chinese market. But also more for their personal experience and personal development. Like, they're very Chinese. Most of them indeed don't speak English at all, but they're still very interested in what's happening in the US, what's happening in Southeast Asia, what's happening in Europe. So where we are actually helping with is helping them to grow on these different channels. So we're helping, for example, one influencer right now on Instagram. And in a couple months' time, she grew from 0 to, I think she's now on 70K fans on Instagram, just in a few months, by repurposing her Chinese content and putting English descriptions on the post and stuff like that. And we're helping her, for example, with that. But what we're also doing is we're creating journeys for influencers right now, and actually focus on Western brands focusing on Chinese tourism. So we're doing, in a couple of weeks, we're flying 2 influencers over, a couple, to Europe, and have like a 2-week trip around Europe where we do different brand collaborations, where they can learn from Western brands and how to work with them, but directly create content for their Chinese channels. So we're doing like these journeys now. So we're planning different types of journeys for them. So that's the other way around. Yeah, so we're helping them grow on these Western channels. So we're helping them with YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, but also doing these journeys and actually leveraging more their Chinese channels, but working with Western brands, but out of China, so not in China.
But in this case, who is the client? Is it the influencer who is paying you, or is it the city for tourism who is paying you?
Yeah, so the clients are paying, so not the influencer. So what we basically do with the influencers, because we have this community, we kind of have the luxury to see who has the most potential, in our opinion. So we've been working with influencers for the last couple of years, so we kind of know, who has the potential to also grow out of China. Because I've been doing some marketing in Southeast Asia, so we kind of know different markets. I'm from Europe myself, so that makes things also easier. So we do that commission based. So for example, now with the trip, so we're doing that trip to Europe for about 2 weeks, right? Usually brands don't want to spend all their budgets on flying someone over, paying for a couple of days to create maybe 1 or 2 pieces of content. But what we're doing now is we fly people over for 2 weeks and work, let's say, with 20 different brands and create 20 different pieces of content. Then that brand doesn't have to take all their budget out. They basically just pay for the content that what is created, because we can cover it, because we're working with multiple brands at the same time.
Makes sense.
And that basically lowers directly the costs and the budgets the brands require. Plus, at the same time, you're giving a great experience to the influencers. It's their first time in Europe. They've never been to Europe. They work with luxury brands here across Europe. They have nice experiences. They will visit a castle in Germany, the south of Germany. All these different types of experiences, which influencers value a lot. In terms of, like, it's not always about the money. It's sometimes also about the experiences. And if you can offer both, it's basically the perfect solution for them. So then they're way more willing to collaborate with you, but also with the brand. So we're trying to create experiences around basically all our collaborations.
I see. Congratulations for everything you achieved. I feel that you have achieved a lot within a very short time, like 2 years, 2 years and a half.
Thanks.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's a China speed. I have to get used to also a little bit. No, it goes really fast. It really goes fast, and it's really cool. And I think it gives us so much opportunities. Definitely when we work very close with these influencers, we actually have now very big influencers from the West contacting us like, hey, I want to get into China. Can we do something together? So it's super interesting to actually see also these Western want to get into China. So we're going to do these collaborations now. So what I mentioned earlier, we're doing that conference. So we're actually doing 3 conferences, one in Hong Kong, one in Amsterdam, and one in Toronto, where we basically localize it, but we get Chinese influencers to every city. But also Western influencers, we get them together with the brands too. And basically also like how to become a better influencer and how do we want to work with brands and what do brands expect from influencers. So it's really cool to see how this is developing also within the whole influencer space. Instead of just creating the content and running promotions through them, like how can we get way more out of them instead of just these advertisements through them or something.
Very interesting. And what I feel very especially interesting, Fabian, is that you have been able to understand Douyin from the influencers, from people in Douyin, and that's very unique positioning you have, unique access. It's very impressive. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Fabian, for your time. Thanks for taking part of your Sunday to talk to us, and I hope you enjoyed. I hope everyone also enjoyed listening to the talk. Bye-bye, everyone.
Definitely. Awesome.